Radar didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just stopped, mid-stride, on the slick tiles of Terminal C at Salt Lake City International Airport, his body tense, ears pricked, eyes locked. Deputy Megan Quinn felt the leash go taut in her hand. "Radar?" she said softly. The terminal was packed. Families, business travelers, voices layered over PA announcements, the low hum of jet engines. But none of that mattered, because Radar wasn't moving. He stood frozen, his gaze fixed on a young girl near Gate 47. Maybe 6 years old, clutching the sleeve of a boy, likely her brother, with a grip too tight to be casual. Her other hand hung at her side. Then, almost imperceptibly, her fingers bent into a shape. Thumb tucked, fingers folding over it. A symbol. One Megan had only seen once before, in a training video on human trafficking response. Her heart stuttered. It was a distress signal, a silent cry for help. Radar's body shifted, not forward but low, alert. His tail didn't wag. His nose twitched once, then again, calibrating the air. Megan narrowed her eyes and scanned the rest of the group. A woman stood behind the children, mid-30s, wearing a travel coat and oversized sunglasses. Her hand rested lightly on the girl's shoulder, too lightly to be protective. More like a warning. Megan kept her voice even. "Let's take a walk," she murmured to Radar. They moved casually, looping wide around a line of travelers. Megan kept her posture relaxed, but her focus zeroed in on the group. The woman turned slightly, enough to reveal her face. Calm, too calm, not a hint of vacation stress or maternal concern. And the children, there were 3, stood unnaturally still. Backpacks tight against their spines, faces blank. No chatter, no fidgeting. Megan felt the familiar prickle at the base of her neck. Radar slowed again as they neared the family. His head dipped, his front paw raised slightly. Pointer behavior. Target acquired. The little girl's eyes met Megan's for a second, wide, glassy. Then she looked away. That was enough. "Excuse me, ma'am," Megan said, approaching with the practiced tone of a community officer. "Is everything all right?" The woman blinked, smiled too quickly. "Yes, of course, just waiting for our flight." Radar growled. It was low, controlled, barely audible beneath the thrum of the airport, but unmistakable. Megan's pulse quickened. Radar had never misjudged a read. "What's your destination?" Megan asked casually. "Orlando," the woman replied without hesitation. Megan smiled politely. "Disney?" The woman nodded. "Family trip." "No ticket visible." Megan tilted her head. "Do you mind if I take a quick look?" The woman's hand shifted instinctively toward her handbag. "We're running late, officer." "I'll be quick," Megan said, her voice even but firm. The girl looked up again, her lips parting like she might speak. Then she dropped her eyes back to the floor. Radar took a step forward, his body a wall between the children and the woman. His growl deepened, this time audible. The boy flinched. The woman's hand froze over her bag. "Ma'am," Megan said, now with authority. "I need to see identification, yours and the children's." The woman's face hardened. "I don't have to show you anything." Wrong answer. Megan's hand dropped subtly to her radio. "Unit 214 requesting backup at Gate 47. Possible 207 suspect. 3 minors." Then, like a switch flipped, the woman grabbed the youngest child's hand and turned sharply toward the boarding gate. Radar lunged forward, not attacking, but blocking. His body hit a perfect intercept, cutting off her angle of escape. "Radar, hold!" Megan barked. The K9 froze, a living barricade. "Ma'am, step away from the children." The woman's eyes darted. Her jaw clenched. She tried to pivot, dragging the older boy behind her. But the child stumbled, and his backpack slipped open. Inside, Megan caught a flash of multiple passports. Different names, same photo. Her blood ran cold. The woman shoved the child forward, sending him crashing into a rolling suitcase in front of an elderly couple, then turned and bolted in the other direction. "Radar, go!" Megan shouted. The shepherd moved with precision and force, closing the gap in seconds. The woman made it 6 strides before Radar cut her off again, forcing her to stumble sideways and hit the floor with a dull thud. She tried to scramble up, but Megan was already there, cuffs in hand. "Do not move." The woman's breath came in fast bursts, panic taking over her once-rehearsed calm. "They're mine," she shouted. But the girl, now being comforted by a flight attendant, shook her head slowly. "She's not my mom," she said, voice just above a whisper. That broke something in Megan. The woman on the ground tried one last attempt. "I was just helping. I didn't take them. I swear, then explain this," Megan said, pulling the passports from the spilled backpack. "Why do these kids have different identities?" The woman closed her eyes. "I didn't want this." Radar stood beside her, silent but unyielding. A protector, a witness. He didn't need words to say what they both already knew. This was no family vacation. This was trafficking. Megan looked up as 2 officers arrived on the scene. One moved toward the children. The other knelt to detain the woman. Radar sat, chest rising slow and steady, gaze still locked on the woman's face. He'd seen enough. So had Megan. And something told her they were only at the beginning. Radar didn't come from a pet store. He wasn't the kind of dog you found sleeping at the foot of a child's bed or chasing tennis balls in a backyard. He was bred for work, born into discipline, shaped by danger. For 3 years, he ran operations with the Border Task Force in southern Arizona, tracking cartel runners, locating missing persons, and sniffing out everything from fentanyl to frightened children stuffed in truck beds. Then, one night near Nogales, things went south. An ambush. 2 agents down. Radar took shrapnel to the shoulder trying to shield his handler. That handler, Officer Cole Ramirez, didn't make it. For weeks, Radar wouldn't eat, wouldn't move. His body recovered, but something in his eyes went dim. They talked about retiring him permanently, sending him to a sanctuary ranch for trauma dogs. Then Megan Quinn showed up. It had been 5 months since her husband, Detective Alex Quinn, was killed in an undercover operation gone bad. No backup, no warning, just a body in a basement and a file stamped, "Closed with complications." Megan hadn't returned to duty yet. Everyone said she needed more time. She knew what they meant. She was too brittle, too angry, too much of a risk. But someone at the precinct had a different idea. There was a dog, damaged, like her, a maybe. Maybe they'd be good for each other, or maybe they'd finish breaking one another. Megan didn't believe in fairy tale turnarounds. She didn't believe in healing. But the first time she saw Radar, sitting silent in the back of a chain-link kennel, body still like stone, eyes tracking her every move, something shifted. They didn't rush it. She came back every day for a week. First just sitting near the kennel, then opening it and letting him sniff her. Then a leash. Then a walk. A short one. Then longer. By week 3, Radar began to follow her without command. By week 5, he obeyed her voice before she even finished speaking. The department raised eyebrows. "Too risky," some said. "You're assigning a widow with a half-rehabbed K-9 to the busiest airport in the state." Captain Burke shrugged. "She needs a partner. So does he." They were paired and reassigned to Salt Lake City International's Joint Task Unit. Airport K-9 detail was less flashy than undercover ops or border runs, but for Megan, it was the only post she'd accepted. No more undercover, no more shadows, just truth, or as close to it as she could find. And Radar didn't need flash anymore. He needed clarity, structure. A leash not just around his neck, but between his heart and someone else's. And Megan was the only one willing to hold it. Most officers treated their dogs as colleagues. Not Megan. Radar wasn't her dog. He was her equal, her partner, her last line of trust in a world that had failed her more times than she could count. They learned each other's rhythms quickly. Megan could tell what Radar was picking up just by the way his shoulder twitched. A turn of the head meant interest. 2 tail flicks meant drug scent. If he lowered his body and locked his eyes, that meant danger, human, immediate, and close. They didn't talk much, not out loud, but they spoke constantly in their own way. It was late, nearly midnight, when Megan finally finished the paperwork from the earlier takedown. The 3 children were in protective custody now. Jenna Cross was in holding, and agents from DHS were flying in the next morning to take over the interview. The rest of the unit had gone home, but Megan stayed. Sitting in the dim light of the break room, Radar curled at her feet. Her phone buzzed. A text from Alex's sister. "Thinking of you today. It's been a year. Love you." Megan exhaled, her jaw tightening. She hadn't needed the reminder. Her body remembered the date before her brain did. The weight never left. She looked down at Radar. "You knew, didn't you?" she whispered. Radar lifted his head, eyes searching her face. Then, slowly, he rested his chin on her boot. There were no tears. Megan didn't cry anymore. But in that moment, the silence between them said everything. He had lost his person. So had she. But now, they had each other. A loud knock on the break room glass made Megan jolt upright. It was Officer Jacobs from the night desk. "Quinn, we've got a call." "At this hour?" she asked, standing. Jacobs nodded, glancing toward Radar. "Security cam flagged something near the charter hangars. A van pulled up an hour ago, parked where it shouldn't. No one got out, no plates visible." "Who flagged it?" "Not who." "What?" "Your mutt's earlier bust triggered an AI pattern alert. Same vehicle description, different gate." Megan felt Radar rise beside her, already alert. "Looks like your partner just started another chapter," Jacobs added, handing her the printout. Megan looked down. Time-stamped. Same type of van. Same tinted windows. Different location. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. "Let's go," she said to Radar, and the dog didn't hesitate. By the time they reached the garage, Megan felt the chill of the night settle deep into her jacket. Radar jumped into the SUV with practiced grace, then sat at full attention as Megan climbed in and started the engine. For some people, night meant rest. For Megan and Radar, it meant clarity. Fewer people, fewer lies. And if there were children in that van, if someone out there thought the job was done just because one handler got cuffed, they were about to learn what it really meant to run out of luck. "Still think we're just the cleanup crew, boy?" Megan said. Radar gave a single huff, barely a sound, but enough to make her grin. She didn't need backup. She had the best partner in the world. Megan tried to push down the unease clawing at her chest. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe the woman was just nervous. Airports made people edgy. Kids got cranky. Adults got short-tempered. But Radar wasn't edgy. Radar didn't get cranky. And Radar never reacted without cause. He was still stiff at her side, hackles raised just enough to be noticed by someone trained to look. His weight leaned ever so slightly on his back legs, the way he positioned himself when he wasn't sure if he'd need to lunge or not. Megan gave the leash a small tug. "Easy," she whispered, not to him but to herself. The woman turned her head slightly towards the movement. She wore a smile, strained, too rehearsed, and bent down to adjust the straps on the youngest child's backpack. The girl flinched. Radar's low growl rumbled out again. Quieter this time, but more insistent. Megan shifted her stance. She was standing too close to let this pass. She straightened her spine and stepped forward. "Mom," she said, polite but firm. "Could I talk to you for a second?" The woman turned slowly, placing a palm protectively on the little girl's shoulder. "Is there a problem?" "I'm just following up on a report about a lost child," Megan said, watching every twitch of the woman's expression. "Mind if I ask where you're traveling to?" "Florida," the woman answered, too quickly. "Family vacation." Megan nodded. "May I see your tickets?" The woman blinked. "What? Your boarding passes? Just standard procedure. Won't take long." There was a pause, less than a second, but Megan caught it. The kind of hesitation you couldn't fake. The kind that only existed when someone needed to figure out which version of the truth they were supposed to use. The woman reached into her oversized purse and pulled out a folded paper. Megan took it, scanning it quickly. Radar's growl deepened. This time he stepped forward, just half a step, but his head lowered, his body rigid. Megan glanced down. "Radar," she said under her breath. He didn't respond. Didn't need to. He'd locked in. The smallest girl had looked up again, just for a second, and in that fleeting glance, Megan saw something. Not fear of being caught, not fear of a stranger. It was fear of staying, the kind that ran deep, silent, conditioned. Megan turned back to the boarding pass. "This says Denver," she said calmly. The woman blinked again. "Oh, right. Sorry, connecting flight. You said you were flying private," Megan added, still watching her. "Why would you have a commercial ticket?" The woman's lips parted, but no sound came out. One of the boys, maybe 9, tightened his arms around his backpack. The shape of it looked wrong. Too square. Too stiff. Not like a child packed it. Radar moved again. This time to Megan's left, positioning himself just slightly ahead. A soft, almost imperceptible click of his teeth followed. His silent warning. Megan turned her body, slightly shielding the kids from the woman. "Do these children belong to you, Mom?" "Yes," the woman snapped. "Of course. What kind of question is that?" "The kind I ask when something feels wrong," Megan said. "And right now, something feels very wrong." The woman laughed, forced, tight. "I don't need this. We're going to miss our flight." As she moved, Radar suddenly stepped in front of her, cutting off her path. Not aggressive, not lunging, but definitive. Megan raised a hand, signaling 2 airport security agents nearby to come closer. The woman's shoulders stiffened. Her eyes darted to the side, scanning for exits, calculating. "I'm going to ask you again," Megan said. "Are these children yours?" "I don't have to answer your questions without a lawyer," the woman replied. "You're harassing me." Megan nodded. "You're right, you don't have to answer, but until we confirm identities, no one's getting on a plane." The woman's voice dropped to a sharp whisper. "You're making a mistake." Megan looked down at Radar, whose eyes hadn't left the little girl. Then she looked at the girl, who was now slowly raising her hand again, just enough for Megan to see that same signal. Thumb in, fingers over. Help. Megan's chest went tight. She took a step closer to the woman. "If they're yours, Mom, you won't mind answering a few questions in private." The woman stared back. Then, just for a second, something slipped. Not panic, not fear, disdain, like the mask cracked. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth, "but make it quick." Megan turned to the security officers now at her side. "Escort her to room 4B. I'll bring the kids." As they led the woman away, Radar remained planted. His eyes followed her the whole time, muscles tense, nose twitching like he was recording every part of her scent, just in case. Megan knelt beside the children, speaking low. "I'm Officer Megan," she said gently. "You're not in trouble, but I need to know if you're okay." None of them spoke, but all three nodded. Radar sat beside them, his presence solid, unmoving. And as the kids began to shift, just slightly, away from fear and toward safety, Megan felt it. Whatever this was, it was big, and they were only just scratching the surface. Megan had been in dozens of interrogations, both formal and improvised. She knew the signs, tight answers, darting eyes, the pause before a lie. The woman sitting across from her in interview room 4B was textbook slippery. "I told you," the woman repeated, her voice taut. "We're headed to Florida. A short trip. I have their consent forms in the bag." "You mean the bag that's currently being examined by TSA and has yet to turn up anything resembling a legal document?" Megan asked calmly. The woman leaned back in the chair, her arms folded tight across her chest. "This is harassment." "Then it should be easy to clear up," Megan said. She tapped her finger against the file in front of her. "Except that none of the children are listed as dependents under your name. None of the boarding passes match, and all three kids gave different last names when questioned separately." For the first time, the woman's mask faltered. It was a flicker, barely visible, but Megan caught it. "I want a lawyer. You'll get one, after you tell me who those kids are." The woman stood abruptly. "I'm done talking." Megan didn't move. "You walk out of this room, I detain you officially. Is that what you want?" The woman's eyes flicked towards the one-way mirror, as if calculating who might be watching. Then her hand shot forward, knocking over the chair, and she bolted through the door. Megan cursed under her breath and was already moving. "Control, be advised." She spoke into her radio. "Subject is fleeing North Corridor. Possible child trafficker. 3 minors." Outside, the terminal buzzed with airport noise. Boarding announcements, suitcase wheels dragging across tile, travelers oblivious to the chaos unfolding just past Gate 49. The woman had reached the kids, who had been held with a flight marshal for safety, and was now dragging the youngest girl by the arm, pulling the others with her. One of the boys stumbled, trying to keep up, but she didn't slow. Megan sprinted after them. "Radar, block!" Radar surged forward like a missile, his powerful frame weaving through the clusters of people with precise control. The leash had dropped from Megan's hand as soon as she'd yelled the command, and Radar didn't hesitate. He wasn't just chasing, he was reading the terrain, reading the moment, and calculating the fastest way to intercept. The woman made it 15 feet before Radar cut her off, skidding to a stop in front of her, body low and still, his eyes locked onto hers. She froze. The children did too, stunned by the sudden appearance of the dog between them and the jet bridge. "Back away from the kids," Megan shouted, closing the distance. "I was just trying to help them," the woman snapped, her tone teetering between defiance and desperation. "They're not safe here." "You're not their guardian," Megan said, coming to a stop beside Radar. "And you've just made it clear you're a flight risk." Security officers began to swarm the area now, responding to the alert. One moved to flank the woman, but Radar didn't budge from his position. He stood like a sentinel, unyielding, unblinking. "Get on the ground," Megan ordered. The woman's chest rose and fell in quick, shallow bursts. "You don't understand. If they don't leave today, the people I work for—" Megan stepped in. "What people? Who are you working for?" But the woman shut her mouth tight, teeth clenched. Officers took her into custody as Radar finally relaxed his stance, exhaling sharply through his nose. Megan knelt beside him, resting a hand briefly on his fur. "You held the line," she whispered. Back in the security office, things escalated fast. The woman, now booked as Jane Doe, refused to give her real name. No identification, no social security number, no proof of relation to the children. Just a burned, prepaid phone in her purse and a pile of inconsistencies. The children, once separated from her, began to shift. The older boy spoke first. His name was Tyler, not Lucas, as she'd claimed. He wasn't her son. He didn't know her real name. She picked us up in San Diego, he said. Said she was taking us to our new home. Megan's hands went cold. The girl, the one who had made the silent hand signal, clung to the flight blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her voice barely registered above a whisper. She said we'd never see our mums again if we didn't behave. Megan looked at Radar, who sat quietly beside her chair, his eyes on the girl like he already understood more than any human could. No barking, no growling, just presence. The kind of presence only a dog like Radar could offer. Later that night, as Megan filed the report and forwarded everything to the FBI's trafficking division, a photo came through the system. A match. The woman's name was Jenna Cross, known associate of a trafficking ring in Arizona, tied to at least 4 previous cases, none of which ever made it to prosecution. She had disappeared 2 years earlier, until now. The twist came at the end of the day, when tech support handed Megan a packet retrieved from Jenna's purse lining, hidden between 2 pieces of fabric. Inside, a folded list, names, ages, destinations, and beside each one, a number, not an ID number, a price. Megan sat in stunned silence. Radar laid his head gently on her boot. She didn't move, because in that moment everything became real. The list wasn't just evidence, it was a record of lives being sold. And the woman who had smiled so easily at security check-in, she'd been the delivery driver. Megan's fingers curled into fists. She looked down at Radar. "We're not done," she said, and Radar, without a sound, lifted his head, watching. Ready. Jenna Cross didn't say a word for the first hour. She sat in the small, grey interrogation room, arms folded, shoulders hunched. The kind of posture that wasn't just defensive, it was learned. Worn in, like a coat you never take off. Her eyes stayed down, and her jaw clenched so tight it looked like it might shatter if someone asked the wrong question. Megan Quinn had seen women like her before, caught between victim and perpetrator. Sometimes they were both. She sat across from her with a case file unopened in front of her. No theatrics, no raised voice, just silence. And sometimes silence speaks louder than a badge. Radar lay beside Megan's chair, alert but calm. His breathing slow, his eyes trained, not on Jenna but on Megan, waiting. He always waited for her cue, like they were dancing to a rhythm only they knew. Megan finally broke the quiet. "You're not a monster," she said. Jenna's gaze flicked upward, the barest hint of confusion crossing her face. "You think I'm going to come in here, slam the file on the table and call you a trafficker? But I won't, because you're not the one running this show. You're just the one bleeding out in the middle of it." Jenna looked away. Megan leaned forward slightly. "I saw the girl, Jenna, the little one. She trusted you enough to raise her hand and ask for help, the only way she knew how. What does that tell me? That somewhere under everything you've done, there's still a part of you that didn't want this." The air shifted. Jenna's hands trembled on her lap. Megan waited. A long pause. Then Jenna's voice cracked into the space between them. "They told me it'd be just one run." Megan didn't say anything. Let her talk. "They said it would be fast. No questions. Pick up 3 kids in Tucson, drive them to the drop. Easy money." And it was. So was the next one. Jenna's eyes had gone glassy now. And then it wasn't. Then they took my phone, my passport. Then I didn't get to say no anymore. If I said no, they'd send someone to my sister's house. She has a baby girl. You understand what that means? Megan nodded slowly. "I do. They gave me a fake name, credit cards, told me what to wear, what to say. If the kids cried, I was supposed to tell them they were going to a better place." Jenna's voice broke then. They weren't. Megan reached into the folder and pulled out a clear plastic evidence bag. Inside was a folded piece of paper. One of the officers had found it hidden in Jenna's purse lining during booking. She slid it across the table. "You want to tell me what this is?" Jenna stared at the bag for a long time before speaking. "It's a list," she whispered. "I wasn't supposed to keep it, but I wanted to remember their names." Megan opened the bag and unfolded the sheet carefully. The paper was worn at the creases, handwritten, nearly 30 names in uneven block letters, ages beside each one. And next to that, flight numbers, destinations, and one more column, a set of coded numbers that looked like pricing tiers. Jenna pointed at a name halfway down. "That boy!" "Caleb. He was 6. He had asthma. They sold him to a woman in Idaho pretending to run a group home. But it was just a front. She placed kids with men who paid more." Megan's stomach twisted. Jenna swallowed hard. "The man I reported to, his name's Nathan Delroy. He's the one running the West. He was the one who gave me the names, the scripts, the routes." "Where is he?" "I don't know exactly," Jenna said quickly. "He never met me in person. Everything came through drop phones, emails sent from public libraries. But I know he's based somewhere in California now, near Long Beach maybe. That's where the last batch was routed." Megan took in the name. "Nathan Delroy." She repeated it silently. "Is he the top?" "Number, but he's the one who handles West Coast transit. Arizona, Nevada, Utah, California. He makes sure the kids don't get flagged. New clothes, new names. Coaches them on what to say. Teaches the older ones to lie." Jenna looked at Megan fully now, and for the first time, there was no defense in her face, just fatigue, and something that looked a lot like guilt. "I'm not asking for anything," she said. "Not a deal. Not forgiveness. I couldn't do it anymore." Megan stood, folded the paper, and slipped it back into the evidence bag. She gave Radar a look. The dog stood slowly and stretched, but his eyes remained on Jenna. "He knew," Jenna said softly, almost like she was speaking to herself. "That dog, he knew I wasn't just lying. He looked right through me." Megan looked down at her partner. "He usually does." That night, back in the precinct's task room, Megan stood in front of the whiteboard, taping the list up beside a map. Names, flights, arrows, pins. Radar lay in the corner, head on his paws, watching every movement she made. She circled one name in red. Nathan Delroy. This was bigger than she thought, and it was just getting started. The warehouse sat in the industrial shadows of an abandoned cargo strip, about 3 miles southeast of Salt Lake City's old municipal airport. From the outside, it looked like every other forgotten building along the perimeter. Tin siding dulled by years of wind and neglect, a sagging chain-link fence, broken floodlights flickering against the concrete, like ghosts too tired to vanish. But Megan knew better, and so did Radar. They moved through the darkness with purpose. No sirens, no backup, just the hum of the SUV's engine fading into silence as Megan parked behind a pile of discarded pallets 2 blocks out. The intel from Jenna Cross had been clear. Nathan Delroy, operating under the guise of a non-profit logistics company, was using this site to load a shipment of children, 3, maybe more, into a marked delivery truck bound for California. It was happening tonight. Megan had been through dozens of raids in her career, but this felt different, not because of the risk, not because of the target, but because of the weight in Radar's steps. He wasn't just alert, he was listening. "Let's see what you've got, partner," Megan whispered, unclipping the leash. Radar moved like smoke, melting into the night. Head low, nose to ground, tail stiff. He didn't need a command. He already knew what they were looking for. They circled around the rear of the warehouse. a set of tire tracks pressed deep into the gravel, still fresh, and the scent, thick, acrid, clung to the air like it was hiding something. Fear, sweat, gasoline, metal. Radar turned abruptly, his body coiling into stillness, and then he looked back. He had something. Megan followed without question. They reached the rear loading dock, where the edge of an old box truck was just barely visible through a half-open bay door. Its engine was off, but the cabin lights were on. And faint, almost ghost-like, came a sound from within. A thump, then another. Megan drew her weapon and signaled to Radar with a flick of her fingers. Search. Radar bolted forward, silently, circling the truck, nose working, furiously. Then he stopped, his front paw pressing once against the bumper. Target inside. Megan crept up behind him, heart pounding as she moved towards the side of the truck. She leaned in, listening. It was subtle, but unmistakable now. Rustling, soft crying, muffled shuffling. Children. She took one step back, readying her radio, when a voice snapped behind her. Turn around, now. A man's voice, calm, cold. She did. Nathan Delroy stood in the shadows behind a stack of plastic crates, neatly dressed, hands empty, face unreadable. His eyes flicked to Radar, then back to Megan. I was hoping to be gone before anyone showed up. Megan didn't lower her weapon. You missed your window. Delroy smirked. You must be Deputy Quinn. Heard about you. And the dog. Radar stepped forward, muscles tensing. Megan could feel the pressure building like a dam about to give. I know what's in the truck. Megan said evenly. And I know who you are. No, you don't. Delroy replied. You know what someone told you. You know what a scared woman under arrest thinks she knows. But me? He stepped forward slowly. I don't touch the product. I don't drive the trucks. I run a logistics company. And unless you have something stronger than hearsay and a growling dog, you've got nothing. Radar growled. Low. Deliberate. One paw stepped forward. That's where you're wrong, Megan said, because Radar doesn't need a warrant to smell fear. And right now, you stink of it. Delroy's expression twisted just for a moment, and that was all it took. He ran. Megan didn't hesitate. Radar, track! The German Shepherd launched forward like a missile, feet barely touching the ground. Delroy rounded the corner of the warehouse, sprinting hard, but Radar was faster, driven not by adrenaline, but instinct. Megan followed, boots slamming the concrete, breath tight in her chest. She rounded the corner just in time to see Delroy scramble toward a side gate. But Radar was already there. He lunged, not to maim, not to tear, but to stop. His body hit Delroy's legs hard, sending the man crashing down into the dirt. Megan reached them seconds later, cuffs already in her hand. You're under arrest, she said breathlessly. For human trafficking, illegal transport of minors, and obstruction. Delroy didn't say a word, just lay there, winded, staring at Radar with something that looked a lot like awe, and maybe, just maybe, fear. Back at the warehouse, the truck was unlocked. 3 children were found inside. No names, no IDs, one barely 5 years old. They didn't speak, not at first. But Radar sat beside the oldest boy as he drank a juice box from the paramedics, silent, steady. Eventually the boy reached out a hand and ran it down Radar's back. That was the first moment he smiled. Later that night, Megan stood outside the taped perimeter, watching as agents from DHS processed the scene. Delroy had gone silent again, but his phone had not. Inside were spreadsheets, routes, and another name. This wasn't the top of the ladder, but it was one more rung closer. Radar stood beside her, nose tilted to the wind, eyes scanning the dark. We're getting there, she said. He didn't bark. He didn't need to. The warehouse looked dead from the outside. No movement, no lights. Just a wind-beaten shell of metal and concrete tucked behind a row of shipping containers near the port of Long Beach. But Megan knew it was alive inside, alive in the worst way. Radar sat beside her behind the passenger seat of the unmarked SUV, his ears perked forward, nose twitching slightly with every breeze that slipped through the cracked window. "He smells something," Megan said into her mic. "Copy that," replied Agent Silver from Homeland Security. "Teams in position. On your go." She looked at Radar. He gave a low, nasal huff. It was time. From all sides, the strike team moved. Plainclothes agents emerged from behind container stacks, rifles lowered but ready. 2 others crept along the loading dock, scanning for tripwires or makeshift surveillance rigs. Megan and Radar were first through the east door. Inside, the warehouse was dim and echoing. Forklifts sat abandoned, and rows of plastic-wrapped pallets lined the back wall. A makeshift office sat raised on a platform, its window flickering from a lone computer screen inside. Radar didn't bark. He didn't growl. He locked onto something Megan couldn't see and pulled, low and hard, toward the far left wall. She followed without hesitation. Delroy's voice crackled through the half-closed door of the office above. "No, the truck's behind schedule," he was saying into a phone. "They'll load the next group at dawn. These kids go out tonight. That's the priority." Radar stopped. Snout pressed against a wall panel near the base of the loading bay. He sniffed again, turned in a tight circle, then sat, head tilted. Alert, Megan crouched. At first glance, it was nothing, but Radar didn't make mistakes. She traced her gloved hand along the baseboard. Then, with a light push, click. The panel shifted. "Silver," she said into her mic. "Hidden compartment, south wall, Radar found it." Within seconds, Silver and 2 agents were beside her. They pried the door wider. A narrow stairwell dropped into darkness, and from below, soft crying. Megan's heart stopped. Radar moved without being told, descending carefully, 1 step at a time. The stairwell led to a sub-basement that had no place in any blueprint. It smelled of mildew, diesel, and old fear. Flashlights hit the faces of 5 children. A girl no older than 10 huddled closest to the wall, her eyes wide and swollen from crying. A boy clutched a soccer ball with both arms, rocking slowly. 2 others sat on mattresses, thin, stained, and barely off the cold floor. The youngest, a toddler, didn't make a sound, just stared. Radar stopped in front of them and lay down. Still, watchful. The little girl leaned forward. "Are you the good kind of dog?" Megan knelt next to her, tears hot in her eyes. "The best kind," she said. "You're safe now." From above, heavy boots thudded across the floor. Agents had stormed the office. Delroy's shouting echoed off the rafters. But down here, in that forgotten concrete tomb, the world had shifted. Because someone had come for them. Someone had heard. Outside, medics were already prepping triage tents. The children would be taken to a secure shelter, processed gently, and hopefully reunited with their families. That would take time. Healing always did. But the escape? That started tonight. Back on the surface, Megan watched as Delroy was loaded into a transport vehicle, still cursing, still convinced he could talk his way out. He hadn't even realized they'd found the basement. Didn't know the list from Jenna had matched with his shipment logs. Didn't know the kids were already halfway to safety before he even saw the first badge. He looked across the lot and locked eyes with Megan. She didn't flinch. Radar sat at her side, panting lightly, eyes sharp. Delroy scoffed. "You really think this changes anything?" Megan crossed her arms. "You're right," she said. "This doesn't change anything." She looked down at Radar. "But we will." And Radar, as if on cue, gave one short, guttural bark, clear, focused, unshaken. A sound no one in that yard would ever forget. Tyler Baines didn't trust dogs. He never said it outright, not in training, not during shift changes, and definitely not in front of the handlers, but everyone on the task force could feel it. The way he kept his distance during K9 briefings, the way he flinched just slightly when one of the patrol dogs barked. Most assumed he'd had a bad experience growing up. Megan figured it was just fear disguised as skepticism. Still, he was good at his job. Former Marine, new to the agency, sharp, methodical, and by the book. The kind of officer who triple-checked paperwork and called in backup even when it wasn't strictly necessary. Safe, controlled. But nothing about that night had been controlled. Not when the side entrance blew open. Not when the air filled with shouting and gunmetal. Not when one of Delroy's men tried to slip through the shadows behind a wall of crates with a stolen security badge and a girl slung unconscious over his shoulder. Tyler had seen the figure too late. Radar hadn't. The shepherd had peeled away from Megan without hesitation, leaping the split between two shipping containers like he was born for it. He'd reached the man just as he reached the dock, and lunged, not with fury but precision. His teeth latched onto the man's sleeve, just tight enough to force him off balance without drawing blood. The man dropped the girl. Radar caught her fall with his body. Later, when the dust settled and the children were in ambulances and the suspects zip-tied in rows against the chain-link fence, Tyler stood beside the truck, watching Radar get treated for a cut on his flank. He caught the guy mid-run. Tyler said, his voice low, still half in shock. He didn't bark, didn't wait, he just moved. Megan gave a small nod. He knew. He shielded the kid. Tyler added, turned himself into a landing pad. He's done it before, Megan said, crouching beside Radar, gently checking the wrap the medic had just secured. He'll do it again. Tyler stared at the dog like he was seeing him for the first time. You always believe him when he reacts like that? Every time. He nodded slowly, then looked away towards the line of transport vans still humming against the curb. His posture shifted. Something in his shoulders dropped. Not weakness, but something closer to humility. I thought the dogs were... I don't know, he admitted. For show. Crowd control. Theatrics. Megan smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. They're the ones who see what we miss, smell what we can't. They don't need motives or proof. They just act. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. I put in a transfer request, he said finally. Megan raised an eyebrow. K9 unit, he clarified. That made her pause. I want in, if they'll have me. You sure? She asked. I've seen what it looks like when someone follows instinct without ego. Tyler replied. And I've never seen anything like what he did tonight. Radar, as if aware he was the subject of conversation, lifted his head and stared at Tyler. The moment stretched. The young officer met the dog's gaze, then crouched slowly beside him, placing a hand tentatively near his paw. Radar didn't flinch. He leaned forward just enough to press his head against Tyler's forearm. No bark, no wag, just trust. Tyler exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. Later, as they loaded up to return to headquarters, Megan took the front seat with Radar curled behind her. Tyler rode shotgun in the second cruiser, eyes forward but different now. Focused, open. On the drive back, the radio chirped with status updates, logistics, follow-ups. But in the quiet between transmissions, Megan glanced at Radar in the rearview mirror. He wasn't sleeping. He was watching the road ahead. And she realized something in that stillness. It wasn't just criminals he was tracking. It wasn't just victims he was protecting. Sometimes even the good guys needed saving too. And Radar, silent, steadfast Radar, had just rescued one of their own. Nathan Delroy didn't fight it. By the time the cuffs clicked around his wrists, he knew it was over. The air of arrogance that had once defined him was gone. What remained was hollow, the shell of a man who thought he was untouchable, now surrounded by agents who had seen what was inside the truck, who had heard the recordings, and who had Radar's teeth inches from his throat when he tried to lie. He was silent when they walked him out. No media frenzy, no closing statements, just the soft shuffle of footsteps across the warehouse floor, and Megan walking 2 paces behind him, Radar at her side like a shadow with a heartbeat. 3 days later, Jenna Cross sat across from Megan in an interview room in LA, this time without cuffs. She still looked fragile, still carried that haunted weight behind her eyes. But something had shifted. She was talking. A lot. The names came first, handlers, drivers, scout recruiters working from state shelters. Then came the structure. Florida, Texas, Oregon. Cities where shipments had moved through under the guise of adoption agencies or youth outreach programs. The web was deeper than Megan had imagined. Some of the kids never even made it to airports. They were walked across state lines, stuffed into buses made to look like church groups. The FBI listened closely. DHS tapped into the cell phones Jenna helped decrypt. Megan sat through hours of intel briefings, connecting dots across a map that now looked like a scar running across the country. And every time they pulled a name, every time another child's location was verified and confirmed safe, Megan felt a layer peel off her chest. But it was never enough. She knew it. So did Radar. By the following week, the Justice Department had asked Megan to consider joining a joint federal task force permanently. They offered her relocation, more resources, higher clearance. She turned them down before the sentence finished. In the debriefing room, Chief Harper raised an eyebrow. "Any reason?" he asked. Megan leaned back in her chair, Radar sitting straight beside her. "Because this work doesn't start on the federal level. It starts here, at the airport, on the ground, where a scared little girl raised a hand and my partner saw it first." Harper gave her a long look, then nodded. "All right," he said, "but don't expect things to slow down." "I never do." Outside, the air smelled like jet fuel and cold metal. Radar walked beside her, head high, nose working, always listening, always ahead. They passed a line of travelers shuffling toward security. Businessmen, families, tourists. None of them knew what had almost passed right under their feet, what had been stopped in time. And maybe that was the point. Megan crouched beside Radar near the security checkpoint, brushing her hand down his back. "We're staying right here, okay?" she said quietly. Radar nudged her hand once with his snout. Minutes later, Megan stood near Gate 22, watching as 3 agents escorted a boy and girl toward a connecting flight to Denver. Reunification. One of the rare, beautiful ones. The older child spotted Radar and broke away from the agent's side, jogging towards them. The boy stopped just short of the shepherd, then smiled. "Hi, Radar." Radar tilted his head and took one step forward. The boy wrapped his arms around the dog's neck, not tight, not clinging, just present. "I told them you were the one who saved us," he said. Megan's voice caught in her throat. "He did," she whispered. "He always does." The child nodded once, stepped back, then walked away. Just a little taller than before. That night, as Megan typed the final report from her desk, the precinct lights low around her, she paused at the last line. She looked at Radar sleeping under her desk, then wrote, "As long as there are children who can't speak for themselves, we'll keep listening." Together. And she meant every word. The playground at Willowhaven Children's Center wasn't fancy. A slide with chipped paint, a plastic seesaw that creaked on one end, a crooked swing set that squealed in the wind. But it was safe. And for the children here, that was enough. Megan sat on a bench in the shade, a to-go coffee in one hand, a folded case file in the other. Her hair was pulled back into a loose ponytail, the sleeves of her field jacket pushed up to her elbows. She wasn't on duty this morning. Not officially. No badge, no gun. Just her and Radar. Radar was lying in the grass near the jungle gym, his big frame stretched out comfortably beneath the sun, his head resting between his paws. A little girl sat beside him, giggling as she wrapped her arms gently around his neck. Her name was Leah, 7 years old. Brown curls, shy smile. One of the 3 rescued from that truck in Long Beach. For the first 2 days, she wouldn't speak, barely made eye contact. But Radar had sat by her bed at the shelter, refusing to move, just breathing with her. On day 3, she whispered her first word. Dog. Now she followed him like a shadow. Megan lowered the file in her lap and watched the 2 of them. Leah's laugh rang out again as Radar gently nudged a tennis ball toward her with his nose. She tossed it clumsily across the grass, and he chased it at half speed, letting her win. This was the part no one wrote down. Not in reports, not in headlines, not in the affidavit that put Delroy away for 40 years, or the press release that named Jenna Cross as the key witness in unraveling a multi-state trafficking network. But this moment of stillness, was why it all mattered. Megan opened her phone and pulled up an email from FBI liaison Ryan Chu. Subject line, Operation Fortress. Final tally. She scrolled down, eyes scanning the bullet points. 14 arrests across 6 states. 29 children recovered. 11 confirmed reuniting with family. 7 suspects still at large. Ongoing investigations in Phoenix, Tacoma, Miami. She paused at the last line. All thanks to a K9 who heard what no one else did. Megan let the phone drop gently into her lap. Her throat tightened. Radar returned with the ball and dropped it at Leah's feet. She beamed, hugged him again, and whispered something into his ear. Megan didn't hear what it was. But Radar gave a quiet whine and leaned into her touch. Megan smiled. A staff member approached, clipboard in hand. They're taking her to a foster home next week, she said softly. Couple in Ogden, the good kind. Megan nodded. She deserves a fresh start. They all do. Radar padded back toward Megan and sat at her feet. Megan reached down, rubbing his ear the way he liked. You done saving the world for today? She asked him. Radar blinked slowly, then turned to watch the other kids run across the play area. His tail thumped once against the dirt. Not yet. Megan reached into her jacket and pulled out a small patch. The K9 insignia. She had an extra one made. She leaned forward and clipped it gently onto Leah's sweater. The girl looked down at it, then up at Megan. For me? Megan nodded. You're part of the team now. Leah turned and threw her arms around Radar one more time, and for the first time since the raid, Megan allowed herself to breathe. Not because the job was done. It wasn't. It never would be. But because, for one quiet morning, they'd given a child back her voice. And Radar had been the one to hear it first. As Megan stood to leave, Radar fell into step beside her without command. They walked toward the exit slowly, sun at their backs, Leah waving from behind the fence. Before stepping off the curb, Megan paused and looked back. Some stories don't need an explosive ending, they just need a beginning. One bark, one child, one moment that says you're not invisible anymore. What about you? What's your story with a loyal pet? We'd love to hear it. If Radar's story moved you or reminded you of your own, share it with us, and help spread awareness about the silent heroes working beside us every day. Subscribe to the German Shepherd channel. Support real stories. Support real K9S.